4-4 ball game. Connor Brooks back on the hill. 1-2 pitch. Swing and a miss. Parrish down on strikes. And the 0-2 offering. Swing and a miss. Back-to-back strikeouts by Connor Brooks. He is really got some good stuff here in the ninth inning. Now the 0-2 pitch. Swing and a miss, and Brooks strikes out the side. We are going to extra innings here in Pittsfield. Here's the 2-2 pitch. Fastball in there for a called strike. Yet another strikeout for Connor Brooks. Blanco settling in. Chokes way up on the bat. And the 2-2 pitch. Fastball in there for a called strike. Now 5 strikeouts in a row. Brooks comes set. 0-2 pitch. A called strike 3 for the second straight inning. Brooks has struck out the side. We have completed 10. It is still Brockton 4, Berkshire 4.
Brooks' impressive performance of 6 consecutive strikeouts would go for naught as Berkshire won 6-4 on a dramatic 11th inning walk-off home run by Mike Moore. Yes, the guy the Rox had given up on and released earlier in the season. Unfortunately, my intern was not recording when Moore hit his game-winning homer, one of many big moments that we missed. But I'll tell you, if there was ever a moment that I smiled at a Rox loss, that would have been it. It's because Mike Moore struggled so much in Brockton. He worked so hard, and he was such a heck of a nice guy that you wanted to see him succeed. He would have preferred it to be in Brockton rather than Berkshire. He wound up with a terrible team and a terrible situation in Berkshire, yet he wound up smashing 16 home runs and hit .266 for them. If he'd have done that for the Rox, they never would have needed to trade Carlos Rosario. So let's talk about the trade. First, let's reflect on why there even needed to be a trade. If you'll recall, the Rox thought they had a big bat for their lineup with Brooks Kieschnick, but he signed with the Chicago White Sox before the Rox played their first game. Brockton had also let Billy Rich slip through their fingers at their own tryout camp, and he went on to star for the first-place New Jersey Jackals. The Rox gave up on Mike Moore. They tried Dan Rohrmeyer, but quickly gave up on him despite leading the team at the time with 4 home runs. They brought in Darryl Nicholas, but he lacked the power that they hoped for. Carlos Rosario turned out to be not only the Rox marquee player, but also the Northern League's most exciting player. But with Carlos, it was like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yes, he hit for high average. He led the league in stolen bases. He made some very flashy plays, but he also made a lot of mistakes, offensively and defensively. The league stats will show that he made 18 errors in 59 games with Brockton. But that does not include mistakes like throwing to the wrong base, incorrectly executing rundowns, or the many base-running blunders that he made. The entire time I was with the Rox, I kept hearing, this is not a developmental league. But I have to wonder what difference it might have made if the Rox had spent a few bucks for a Spanish-speaking coach to work one-on-one with Carlos on basics. Brockton, of course, had manager Ed Noddle, a former pitcher. They had a full-time pitching coach in Rich Sever, and a part-time coach in Pat Bowen. Pat was the head coach at Stonehill College, very good baseball guy, but again, part-time, did not travel with the team, and honestly, I don't know if he spoke Spanish. Carlos had so much natural talent, but seemed to lack some baseball fundamentals, which the Rox, like most independent teams, were not going to help him with. With Carlos, the Rox were a third-place team struggling to play 500 balls, so trading him for a slugger made sense. And the guy for whom he was traded was a slugger, make no mistake, a big, big slugger by the name of Jermaine Swinton.
Swinton, the Northern League home run leader last season with 27, was 5th in the league with 72 runs batted in. Stands 6'4", weighs in at 250 pounds. He's a big man. Says bigness runs in his family. He says he has a brother about the same size. His dad is a little bit shorter, but he says he's built like a bodybuilder. Swinton does have a sense of humor. So we were talking about his family members and how big his brother and dad are, and he says, yeah, my mom's 6'10". I go, are you kidding me? He goes, yeah, I'm kidding. He said with a straight face. So apparently Jermaine's got a dry sense of humor. I took it hook, line, and sinker. The Rox trailing 1-0, but coming to the plate is the big guy. New addition to this lineup, Jermaine Swinton. Swinton still looking for his first base hit as a member of the Brockton Rox. 0 for 5 in his debut. Struck out one time. Big expectations for this big guy. He's been having quite a season. Poor Gary. Hit 15 homers for them this season. And the first pitch to the big right-hander is swung on and missed. Sitting .248 for the Railcats, 15 homers and 41 runs batted in. Magri rocks and fires, misses outside, count evens at 1 ball and 1 strike. It's fun to watch him take batting practice. If you're planning on catching a game in the next homestand at Campanelli Stadium, get out there early. Swinton is fun to watch. Long drive right field, retreating is Larkin, way back, and the yard is not big enough to hold that one. A home run for Jermaine Swinton. His first as a member of the Brockton Rox, and it ties this ball game at 1-1. Be careful in Brockton. That one may be coming down soon, somewhere near you.
So the Rox finally had a legitimate power threat to stick in the cleanup spot for the remainder of the season. The problem was, there wasn't much season remaining. The trade also allowed Chris Cosby, who had been stealing a lot of bases and batting around .300, to inherit the leadoff role for which he was probably best suited, and Mike Davis to not only take over at second base, where he wasn't as flashy as Carlos had been, but much more steady defensively, and it allowed him to leave the designated hitter spot, which he had hated.
Mike Davis swings the bat much better when he is playing in the field, second base or third base, as opposed to DHing. I talked to him about that prior to the ball game, and he's pretty excited about the opportunity to get some serious playing time at second base. Crowther kicks and delivers. The 1-0 pitch is swung on and lined into left field. Coming on is Parrish. It drops in front of him for a base hit. Mike Davis leads things off here in the second with a single. We were talking about the DH versus position player thing. He said he just has not felt comfortable as a designated hitter this season. Davis said he actually had been talking to his folks, telling them that he was really struggling to handle the role of the designated hitter. So he did not want to complain to the team, though. Said that he was afraid if he said anything to Ed Noddle that he would come off looking like a bad guy. You really got to give him credit. I mean, it would have been easy for him to, gripe and moan, but he did not. Davis attributed that to his folks. He said they told me not to complain like that. Now it's paid off for him. Carlos Rosario no longer with the team, so Davis is going to get the bulk of the action at second base. Mike Torres will see some playing time there as well.
Having won 2 out of 3 in Pittsfield, the Rox hope to carry their momentum into their next 3-game set in Glens Falls against Adirondack. The front desk clerk at the hotel was nice enough to offer the use of his own car to manager Ed Noddle, who invited me to join him for lunch. Awesome. We climbed into the car, headed into town, stopped at a red light, and then after a few seconds, Ed just rolls his car right through the intersection with the light still red. I really think his mind was still at the ballpark. I just tightened up my seatbelt and closed my eyes. We made it. The next day, though, I ventured out on my own.
Eastfield Stadium is located in Glens Falls, New York. The Rox are staying in Lake George. It's about a 20-minute ride or so, maybe 15. Different hotel than they had us staying at last time. The first thing the players look for when they get to a hotel is their food in walking distance. So there's not a whole lot. But there's a trolley. It takes you right into Lake George, which is quite a vacation spot. I don't know if any of the players actually did that today. I did. Got on this trolley this morning and went and checked out the sights. 2-0 pitch. Swung on, driven to center field. Cosby retreating near the warning track. Looks up, reaches up, and makes the catch at the wall. Chris Cosby with a good jump. Able to run down that fly ball for out number 2. Lake George is truly a very scenic spot. Out at a restaurant called the Overlook Cafe, which overlooks Lake George. They've got lots of hang gliders out and some paddle boats out on the lake. It's really a lot of fun. Personally, for me, I think the most memorable thing about this road trip is going to be the trip over to Fort William Henry, where I learned all about cannons and muskets from that era. They told about the muskets that the soldiers carried back in those days in the 1700s, and they used bayonets. They hadn't put a whole lot of thought into the bayonets that they attached to the muskets, and what they did was they basically would plug them right into the barrel of the gun. Kind of foolish, because that meant that you could, A, no longer fire the gun, and B, if you actually stabbed somebody with a bayonet, when you drew back the gun, usually the blade stayed in the body of the victim. As painful as that sounds, I don't think that's as painful as what we have seen here in Glens Falls the past 3 nights. And it has been about as painful as a bayonet into the rib cage.
The addition of Swinton had turned the Rox into a serious offensive threat, but the pitching suddenly went south, allowing 32 runs in 3 games. They lost all 3, the Lumberjacks pretty much killing their playoff hopes. The question now was, would Brockton fans still show up to support them when they returned home for their final games? Be sure to click the subscribe button to follow my wild and wacky journey with the Brockton Rox, because more episodes are on the way. Thanks for watching.